Hi YouTube, welcome back to Wtf Rc Cars. So, carrying on with the Rc10 CC. Still yet to receive as replacement bits or the E-clip. So, we're just going to have to carry on as is. But yeah, let's bring in for a close-up look and see how far we get with this one. Right, so moving on. So we're going to need a tiny bit of thread lock. You want your two longer of the domed head screws for the front, and the two shorter ones are going to go in from the side. So I just put a little bit of thread lock on them purely because if we thread lock them it means we don't have to go so tight with screws. And I know it's a shelf queen and these shouldn't be vibrating loose or anything, but these parts aren't going anywhere near any plastic, so it shouldn't cause an issue. And it does mean you can just gently nip them up, because some of the alloy parts of this kit are not the highest quality, and I think it'd be very easy to thread them. And some of these Allen key heads are tiny, so you just want to carefully line the screw hole up. So once we've got the screw hole lined up, we can then just carefully tighten this down, and because we've thread locked it you barely need to nip it up, because I think you'd easily strip the threads on these. So next we're going to get this side, and same again, hole towards the bottom or towards the back of the RC. If we just get the threads started by just finger tight, then it will let you rotate this bit. Just helps getting the threads sort of started. And like most parts on this build, it's in a bit of an awkward place, as in you can't quite get your fingers around the end of Allen keys, and it is one of the Imperial size heads on this Allen key, but they're not too bad to put in. They're quite small screws. So that's got these bits, give it a bit of strength towards the front. So let's see what else we've got. Right, so moving along, we've got a countersunk screw, and it's telling us to fit it towards the right side of the vehicle. The front screw isn't countersunk, so I'm guessing we go for one hole back. It's pretty much his only option at this point. Just take your time with this, make sure no thread locks near it, as they advise that thread lock shatters this clear plastic. But basically we're going to be screwing this antenna tube mount, and it says it should face backwards, and you don't want to go crazy tight with this. Just nip it up, because this clear plastic is very brittle. So let's see what else it's got in store for us. Right, we're now going to be fitting the tray in, and for this we've got two more of these countersunk screws. So let's see if I can kind of get this on camera for you. But basically you're going for the two inner forward facing holes. So if I line that up, so these are the two holes in the chassis that we're aiming for with these two screws, and we just need to get these screwed down. Again, take your time screwing these down. Don't try and go too quick with them, because it does produce heat in the plastic, and quite often if you've got your finger near the screw hole you can actually feel the plastic getting hot, and you hear the screws start grabbing like that one did. So just take your time with it, and I certainly would not use an electric driver with this at all, because I think it'll very quickly overheat the plastic and either cause it to shatter, or your screw's going to get stuck as the plastic melts. It doesn't behave in the same way as normal RC plastic. I think They could have probably done with countersinking a little bit deeper because they're all still proud. But that is what we should have fastened in. Next, we're going to have our battery retaining mechanism, I believe this is. So for this, you've got your clear battery clip, and it looks like we're going to be fastening that sort of in that position. So we want to fit one of our longer head screws, and then the side that's got the hole in, or the elongated hole, we're going to fit the washer to the top, and then you're just going to want to tighten these down. And again, as this is cutting threads into this plastic, just take your time with it. Don't go crazy trying to put it in with a electric driver or anything, because I'm pretty sure it will cause the plastic to shatter. So we just need to get these two tightened down into the battery compartment, and then we'll see what else we've got. Right, so we are now building up the control bars that go to the steering. So it's telling us we need a little bit of thread lock on these tiny little grub screws. So let's see which lovely Allen key fits in these little things. So we're going to start by just screwing these little grub screws into the two collars. Then you're going to place one of your steering wires, if you like, through one of the collars. Then we're going to get the other one, and that's going to go into the side of it. So we want another collar on. And then here comes the interesting bit. So you want to fasten the grub screw down directly onto the little wires. So you want the wires flat and the grub screw going down onto them. And it's telling us to start with this in kind of this position. So we're going to want one of those wires facing across and one facing directly down. And then you're going to want to carefully nip up the little grub screws. So hopefully that gives you an idea. You want one down, one facing across, and it's showing you to fit it more or less like that. So let's see what else we've got. So next we're going to get a servo. Make sure you've plugged this into your receiver and centered it first. Then we're going to get one of our blocks, and you want the hole in the bottom. Then we're going to get 4 of the little alloy washers and 4 of our machine head screws, and then we got to screw these all in to hold the servo in place. And again with this, I really wouldn't use an electric driver, although these are quite chunky blocks. I think an electric driver, you're definitely going to run the risk of shattering these. So we're going to fasten both blocks on with the holes in the bottom, and you want your servo in that orientation. So I'll get these screwed in and see what else we've got. Right, so once we've got this assembled with the scrolls at the bottom, next we've got to attach our actual steering bar and the servo horn. So they don't actually give you a servo arm with this kit, So this is just one that I had kicking around. So let's see if we can get it somewhere near. So once we've got that on, you're going to have to find yourself a screw for your servo arm. And most aftermarket servos will come with some cheap plastic arm and a screw, and that's pretty much all you need for this kit. So it doesn't really give us a lot to go on, as in how this is going to fit through. So I'll go for the outermost hole. So basically you've just got to try and work this through the servo arm. So it should just go through, leaving this side facing down. Now once you've got it in, you can now loosen these grub screws off. So we can just loosen these off a bit, and that will allow you to align this so it's facing down. We might need to adjust this further when we get it in the RC, and sometimes you end up having to leave these slightly loose just so you can get these to line up, but we shall see what happens. But that's roughly what we should end up with. Your servo arm, don't forget to center your servo before you fasten the arm, as linkage and as little screws. So let's move on. So we're going to be fitting the servo in the RC. I would just back these off slightly, find out which holes your servo is likely to line up with, and then you just want to hook the end of this through as close as you can get it. And for me, it kind of feels like it's going to completely shatter that steering link. It really doesn't feel like that wants to go round. But if you just slowly work away at it, you should get it to go through. You don't want to be forcing it too much. Just work it in and it should go through. Then we've got to get a servo lined up. So once we've got the servo kind of in place, you're going to have to get 2 of these washers under the back hole of the servo, because the bottom of the RC isn't level because of where the bumper fastens on. So the easiest way I can think of doing this is to get the actual screw in first, then drop your washers onto the top of it, and then you're going to try and line the actual hole up in the servo mount. And then you're going to carefully get this one started, and then I'd move across and try and line the front up. And we're quite lucky on this, the front one lined up pretty easy. So we just need to get these 2 screws tightened up, and then we can nip the brackets up on the servo, and we can line our steering linkage up. So we get these screwed down and carry on. So once we've got it screwed together, I've just nipped these up, and then all that's left to do now, if we just get our grub screws and just slacken these off ever so slightly. So we just need to slide under these collars, and then we just need to reposition where they're actually fastened. So I'm not sure why the instructions tell you to build it the way they do, because that's not the way it wants it to be actually positioned in the RC. So for these, all you want in is to get your servo centered, and then you can just change the length and where these are fastened to better suit getting your actual servo centered. And then we should just be able to nip these up. It should allow us to have steering. Certainly leaves a bit to be desired, this setup. And it will work. It'll probably catch on that screw. So we may have to move this collar down a bit, just to try and give us a bit of wiggle room. I think that should give us enough. But it's in, and not too awkward to fit, just a little bit of messing about compared to most other RCs that we're used to. So next up, we will be fitting the receiver and speed controller. Right, so fitting the receiver. So I'm going to fasten our little receiver in, and we've got to try and get the antenna. So we just need to thread the antenna up through where the antenna straw is going to go. I'm going to leave the antenna straw out for the time being, because if we're flicking RC over, it'll get really awkward. Then in this one, I'm just going to chuck a Tamiya speed controller in it, or Tamiya, however you want to pronounce it. So we do get some 3M tape with the actual RC. So for a speed controller, I'm just going to mount it opposite where the receiver is. Now you can either run the receiver wire down under the battery and plug it in, or you can just leave it over top. I think for me, for simplicity, I'm just going to leave it over top because it'll be easy to get a battery in and out. Then it looks like we've got space for our motor wires. Then we've just got our power switch to try and find somewhere for this to live. I think for me, I may just stick it down. So I do have a little bit of this 3M tape left. So I think for me, I'm just going to stick it there. Should be fine. We should now be able to fit a battery. So looks like you can just about get a standard battery pack in here, and you just have a little clip, hold it in place. So it looks like it all powers up. Let's get us transmitter. So we just have to find somewhere for a servo wires to tighten down to, so we can tidy them up. So it's as good a point as any just to check your steering travel, make sure nothing's binding, set your end points, because you don't want to be putting a lot of stress on any of this. But it does all work, it's all successfully fitted so far, so let's carry on, see what else we've got. So moving on, believe it or not, for £300 and odd kit, Team Associated doesn't give you a pinion. So I've just grabbed a random 48 DP pinion. This one just happens to be 25 tooth. Not really concerned with the correct gearing or anything, because it's never seriously going to be driven. But let's have a look. So we do have a bunch of screws, and strangely enough these are 2mm. Not really sure why they've decided to go metric on these, but we're going to get his motor and try and line it up. And I'm just throwing a stock Tamiya silver can in this, because basically we just need it to be able to move. So I'm just going to get them into position and see if we can get the gear mesh anything like. I think 25's possibly going to be a bit of a push. It looks like we're going to get away with it. Doesn't look like it's going to line up particularly well with the Tamiya motor, but to be totally honest, I'm pretty much past caring at this point, because nothing else lines up right on this kit or fits good, so why should the pinion and motor be any different? So I'm just going to bring it off the motor and just nip it up. And it looks like we've got plenty of play on this motor. And I just like them to have a little bit of back and forward movement. Just so they're not overly tight. But once we've got that on, should be able to connect as wires. And as I say, I'm not too fussed about the correct gearing or anything on this. It will never be sort of driven around in anger. It's just to make it move. Then the next one we've got is this little motor plate, and I think these are the tiny little screws. So we should be able to line this up, and you should be able to pop these in. Now we should have one at the top and then another at the bottom. And again, thanks to the amazing design of this RC, this one is a bit of a pain to screw in, because the suspension arm is directly in the way. So just to give you a rough idea, we've put the two motor mount screws in, and then these two screws to hold this plastic cover on. Then we get this little rubber bung just to keep the dirt and crud off of the world's weirdest looking diff assembly. But that pops in like that. And now we can move on and see what else we've got. So I've just fitted the antenna tube. Just needed to cut it down a little, but does give it the sort of period look. We've got our motor wires all attached. So next it's time to put the little clip in that holds the battery down, which we've already got. So I think we'll be moving on to wheels. So let's see what they're like to assemble. Right, so moving along, we're going to be assembling as wheels. So it looks like it's telling us to sit one of these centres inside the tyre. So let's see if we can successfully get one of these in place. Certainly wants to put up a bit of a fight, but it should go in fine. So we got that in. Then it's wanting one of the halves to be put inside the actual tyre. Then we're going to get one of the front halves and see if we can work this in. Now you've got to be careful to line your screw holes up. So that's pretty much how it's going to go together. Then we got 3 screws, and we're going to have to build 2 of these front ones up. So you got 3 screws, and you just need to carefully screw these down, and this should locate into the rear half. So I would get one position first. It'll help you line the other 2 up before you get tightening anything down. And again, just take your time, go steady with these, and you should get them tightened up with no cracks or anything. So I'll get these screwed down and get the other front wheel built up, and then we'll have a look what the rears are like. Right, so that is the 2 front wheels assembled. So let's move on to the rear. So for assembling the rear wheels, that's what we want to end up with. You do get these 2 little rings, and they're slightly tapered towards one side. These are for fitting the vintage type modern tyres. So from what I understand, they help hold it onto the rim, but if you're using the stock tyres, they're not needed. So we've got to carefully try and get this inside the actual rubber, and it can be a little bit awkward, and just be careful how much you're squashing it, because with it being this clear plastic, I'm guessing it's going to be quite brittle. But if you just carefully move it around, you can get it positioned inside. Make sure none of your tyre is pinched by it. Then we've got 1/2 that we're going to have to drop inside. Flip it over, and then you just want to line up your screw holes. Then we just got to get it into position and drop these 3 screws in, and then you just need to get them tightened down, and then you'll have your rear wheels assembled. And you can see on the back, as you tighten these up, you just want the screws to be almost to the back, but not quite sticking out. I wouldn't over tighten these, because you're highly likely that you're going to shatter the actual wheels. So I'll get them screwed up and see what we've got next. Right, so there we have it, front and back wheels built up. Moving along. So if you're going to run the RC, you've got the big and little wheel nuts that you can put on. And then on the front, we've got more of these little bushings. So you want one in front back, one in front, and then you can slide them on. And for these, we've got a much smaller sort of wing nut affair, and you're just going to tighten this down. You're not going to tighten it up to the actual bushings, so all you're going to do on the front is take a bit of play out of them. So moving on, I've had to remove the body clip that we had on this side. I've still not received the E-clips or anything, so you've got your standard little slot in the back that you have to line up with the bar that we've got sticking through our axle. So if we get that lined up, then you can start screwing on the little plastic wheel nut, if you like. And then I find it easier on these to just grab a hold of it with the pliers. You just got to be gentle, and if you just spin your wheel, it'll screw down. Just make sure your pliers aren't catching on the outside of your wheel or anything, and you just want to nip them down till they're holding the wheel. So I'll get the last one in place. And if it is an RC that you're gonna try and run, you do also get the both the small and large nuts for the front and rear wheels instead of the little plastic sort of wheel nuts. But we do have the RC functionally assembled now. I think the only other bits we've got is the wing and body. So if we power it up, we got his battery fitted, we got his radio gear on, we've got a steering with his endpoint set. Never thought I'd find a use for a Traxxas servo, but the black does kind of go with it. And then we've got his drive with his brake and reverse. And you can see the diff does function. But yeah, the suspension does seem to work quite well. And definitely bit of a strange kit to build, this one. Slightly worse experience due to missing E-clip and the sort of hubs shattering, which I still haven't got, but they have promised that they are going to replace them. They did reply really quickly, so I'm guessing it's just a supply sort of issue. When they get them through to CML, they're going to forward them on to me. NB Models was fantastic. As soon as I mentioned that I'd got a few issues with it, they engaged with CML. They went straight through to Team Associated. But yeah, so for this video at least, I think we're pretty much as far as I can get it until we get some nice weather that lets me finish the body shell. So let's wrap this one up. So there we have it, the RC10cc, functionally a roller without the body shell at the moment. My thoughts on this is, it's a hard one. I'm kind of torn. On one hand, it's fascinating to build a classic RC such as this and see the limitations of what they were working with, some of the questionable designs, but at the time, did we have anything better? Certainly a hard one. Definitely a nice, fascinating build for anybody that either can remember the RC10 back in the day or owned one and just wants one to put on shelf and want to build it again. Anybody that feels like they missed out on something, and you can definitely appreciate the newer RCs. Certainly a weird one, as in, would I advise anybody to have one? I mean, issues of missing parts and the cracked hubs aside, it's definitely, you've really got to know what this car is to want it in the first place, and it's got limited use. I mean, it's gonna look cool on shelf, but then again, pretty much all of them do. And use-wise, you'd probably get more use out of a Tamiya Frog. At least you can readily get all the parts, and there's lots of mods you can do. This, I wouldn't recommend running it, other than just very carefully driving it around, because as you build it, you can see the tension on some of the screws into this very brittle plastic, and I would guess as it ages, this clear plastic tends to not age as well as some of the proper RC plastics. Now, for the price of the kit, where you're talking sort of over 300 quid, pushing 330 to 350, there's a lot of kits you can buy for that. I mean, depending on where you're shopping, you could go for the TA08 Pro, which is a car you can build, got a lot of nice bits, and you can race. You could have like the Tamiya Frog, or pretty much a lot of range at Tamiya cars that you can actually use and get lots of mods for. But ultimately, I think if you're even looking at this, it's costs. You're either like me, extremely curious and just wanted to see. I mean, the weird diff setup is, I'm not sure if it's a stroke of genius or insanity. It's complex, but it works, and it is nice to be able to see all the moving parts through the clear bulkhead and diff housing and everything. So yeah, definitely a strange one. I mean, maybe we've just been really unlucky, but at minute we're 3 for 3 with Team Associated cars that have had bits missing, which, if nothing else, at least they're consistent. I mean, in all cases, they are very quick to correct it. This is the longest I've had to wait, but then again, this is a very sort of strange oddball car. Whether they've got to wait for a production run to get these spares, or they're going to do some and then send them out to anybody that's had issues. Yeah, it's the instructions leave a bit to be desired. The shocks are really nice and still not leaking anywhere. I did use the sort of O-ring grease, but they're dry as a bone everywhere, which is kind of reassuring for a car that's going to be like a shelf queen. You don't want it dropping its oil everywhere, but if you're really never going to run it, then I'd probably build it with no oiling. But yeah, definitely an interesting one. It's different. It can be frustrating. The instructions could do a bit of work, but I've heard that they have been updated. Whether it corrects all problems, not sure. But yeah, definitely an interesting one. But leave your comments below. Have I just been really unlucky with Team Associated cars, or is missing parts just par for course with them? I mean, it could have been easily avoided, the KO show. So another one that I'm waiting to build the paint the body shell. But with this, same as the X-ray cars and quite a lot of Tamiya's, little parts like the E-clips or tiny little screws, you get an extra bag with a few in, which kind of serves two purposes. It covers them if the quality control's not right, but it also covers you if you break or lose one of the tiny little screws or clips. But it would have been nice for the price of this kit. There's definitely the profit in it for them to have just had one extra bag with, say, a few E-clips, some of the tiny screws, but literally there is nothing. Not even enough E-clips to finish vehicle, unfortunately. But yeah, just a few thoughts that are going around in my head. But now it's built, I'm pretty much looking forward to getting the body shell done and see if I can do something with it to make it slightly different. But yeah, thanks again for watching WTF Rc Cars. If you find this kind of content interesting, or just like listening to my incessant ramblings, don't forget to like and subscribe, hit the notification bell, share to friends and family, and catch you guys again in the next one.